Dear shareholders, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Heinz Gerhard Venter. I'm chairman of the Supervisory Board, and I'm pleased to open this year's AGM of the Salzgitter and I'll also chair the meeting in accordance with the Article of Association. I'd also like to extend a warm welcome to you on behalf of the Executive Board and the Supervisory Board. Public Notary Dr. Gullich will take the minutes of this AGM. I would also like to extend a special welcome to the students of the Vocational School No. 1 in Gifhorn and the Otto Bennemann School in Braunschweig, whom we have invited here as guests today. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to first of all point out that it is not permitted to take photographs or record film and sound at the AGM. The cameras you can see here only transmit images to the screens in the hall and the various monitors in the foyers, and until the end of the chairman's report we'll also transmit a live stream which can also be accessed on the internet. Individual shareholders will not be recorded by this equipment. I would also like to allow press representatives to make film, sound and image recordings of the events happening on the stage. I'd also like to ask them not to take individual pictures or recordings of shareholders without their consent in accordance with the law. I'd also like you all to switch off or mute your mobile phones. The operator of the Congress Park building has also advised me that smoking is absolutely prohibited in the entire hall. Please absorb this. You can smoke if you need to use the entrance to the building. There are ashtrays available. When you do that, you will no longer be on the attendance list and you will be taken off the attendance list. When you re-enter the attendance area, you will be re-registered when you present your admission ticket. The attendance area includes the main hall here and the foyers and up to the entrance control areas and the sanitary facilities. In the foyers and the sanitary areas, the AGM is transmitted via monitors and speakers. Shareholders who are within the attendance area are considered to be taking part in the meeting. However, requests to speak and make any votes can only be done here in the main hall. Before we move on to the agenda, I would like to advise you that since the last AGM there have been no changes to the Supervisory Board. The following changes have happened to the Executive Board. Mr. Michael Kiekbusch stepped down from the board on the 31st of December 24 to retire. He handed over his responsibility as board member for human resources to Ms. Birgit Dietzer, who has been a member of the board since the 1st of September 2024. Ms. Dietzer introduced herself at the last AGM. The Supervisory Board would like to thank Mr. Kiekbusch for his many years of service. I note that all members of the Supervisory Board are present with the exception of Mr. Klingebiel, who can't be here for personal reasons. However, Mr. Klingebiel is watching via video and can take part in the meeting virtually. The members of the Executive Board are all present, although Mr. Hera, one member is caught in a traffic jam, but we're arriving any second now. Ladies and gentlemen, today's AGM was announced by publication in the Federal Gazette on the 10th of April 2025, with notification of the complete agenda and the proposed resolutions of the Supervisory Board, and as applicable, the Executive Board, referring to here to agenda items 2 to 10. I note that the AGM has therefore been formally convened in due time and course. In addition to the Federal Gazette announcement, the convening of the AGM was in accordance with the Management Board, was communicated to intermediaries, shareholder associations and other parties in accordance with the statutory provisions. The AGM was convened in that sense on the 10th of April, and the information was forwarded on the 1st of April to those sites which would disseminate the information throughout the EU. I note that the following documents have been published in accordance with statutory provisions on the company's website at www.salzgitter.ag, and they are available there. The convening of today's AGM, including the agenda and the proposed resolutions, the adopted annual financial statements of Salzgitter AG, and the approved consolidated financial statements as of 31 December 2024, the combined management report of Salzgitter AG and the group for financial year 2024, the report of the Supervisory Board, the proposals of the Executive Board and the Supervisory Board for the appropriation of the retained earnings, and the Executive Board's reports on the reasons for the exclusion of subscription and subscription rights. Those are in agenda items 8 and 9. The aforementioned documents and the report of the Management Board, in accordance with sections 2889A and 315A of the German Commercial Code, are in the management report, which is also available on the company's website. These documents are also available here at the hall at the registration table. The list of shareholders and shareholder representatives in attendance is currently being compiled. I will announce the resulting attendance list before the first vote. You have the right to review the list of attendees at the registration table. Changes to attendance are recorded electronically and recorded and available in supplements to the attendance list. I would ask those shareholders and representatives who wish to leave the AGM early without continuing to represent their voting rights, they must present their admission ticket at the exit checkpoint so that the list of participants can be corrected. This applies throughout the course of the meeting, also after votes has been cast, up to the point where I expressly close the meeting. Shareholders who are only wish to leave temporarily must re-register when they re-enter the hall. You may also, if you wish, to authorize other participants at the AGM to exercise voting rights. In the case that you wish to authorize, that is the power of attorney to third parties. Please fill out that part of your admission ticket, and that is on the back of your ticket. Please sign it, and then go to the exit control station with the person to be authorized and hand in the admission ticket to that authorized person. This is a view of that section of the admission ticket. If you wish to authorize a proxy, please contact the entry control station. Then you can authorize and instruct the company's proxies electronically using tablets. I would also like to point out that the proxies, one of whom is here in the main hall to my left, and the other in the entrance area on the ground floor, will not accept any instructions to speak or to ask questions or propose motions. Before we kick off with the agenda, a few organizational matters. In the common interest of today's annual general meeting being conducted swiftly, all items on the agenda are to be presented in a single session following the executive reports on the past financial year. The general report will then commence, and all shareholders and shareholder representatives who wish to speak may speak on all items on the agenda and ask any questions on all items on the agenda. Following that debate, all votes will take place. In order to conduct those votes, I would like to point out that voting only takes place here in the main hall, not in the foyer and not in any other rooms. All of those who wish to cast a vote must therefore be in the main hall when I call for that vote. A computerized attendance registration system will be used for voting. Please note that if you have more than one admission ticket, you must register each one at the accreditation center on the ground floor. Only one admission ticket can be used for voting. Only a registered ticket can be used for voting. If you would like to speak on any of the items, please go to the Request to Speak table to my left here. Then a form will be filled out with your name, and then you should please present your admission ticket for that purpose. So that you can prepare yourself, I will then call up the speakers accordingly. In the interest of all shareholders here at the AGM, I'd like you to be concise in your comments and limit yourselves to the items on the agenda. You can speak for any time you wish, any length of time you wish, but I would ask you to keep that length of time to a maximum of 10 to 15 minutes. I reserve the right to change individual procedures, for example, the length of speaking time available. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to point out now that following the report of the Executive Board and the speeches of the shareholders, we will have an approximately 30-minute break. During that time, please use that for lunch, which will be served in the upper foyer. After that, the Executive Board or the Supervisory Board will answer your questions. And ladies and gentlemen, if you have already attended one of our AGMs, you will know that we always honour the memory of those who have died in our company since the last AGM before moving on to the agenda. We would like to do that here again today. Those who have passed away did their very best for our company. However, we would also like to remember not only deceased colleagues from our company, but also those who have died in connection with Russia's war against Ukraine, the conflict in the Middle East, and other armed conflicts in the world. We are aware that these deaths represent a tragedy for many people. The same applies for the two victims of the plane crash, which occurred at our site in Salzgitter in April of this year. I would like to now ask all those present to hold a moment's silence. Thank you for that mark of respect. We'll now move on to the agenda. First of all, let me introduce the agenda items 1 to 10, and they're on the screen now. Presentation. Number 1, presentation of the adopted annual financial statements of Salzgitter AG and the approved consolidated financial statements as at 31 December 2024 with the combined management report and the report of the Supervisory Board. 2, resolution on the appropriation of the balance sheet profit. 3, resolution on the discharge of the members of the Executive Board. 4, resolution on the discharge of the members of the Supervisory Board. 5, resolution on the appointment of the auditor for financial year 2025. 6, resolution on the approval of the remuneration report. 7, resolution on the amendment of the remuneration of the members of the Supervisory Board. 8, resolution on the authorization to acquire and use treasury shares in accordance with the law and the exclusion of subscription and tender rights. 9, resolution on the authorization to use derivatives in connection with the acquisition of treasury shares in accordance with the law and on the exclusion of subscription and tender rights. 10, resolution on a new authorization of the Executive Board to hold a virtual AGM and the corresponding amendments to the Articles of Association. The invitation includes the resolutions proposed by the Executive Board and the Supervisory Board. The full wording of is in the invitation, and of the proposed resolutions are available for inspection here in the hall. Before the report of the Executive Board, I would like to briefly report on the Supervisory Board work during fiscal year 2024. The Supervisory Board held 5 meetings during the year. At that meetings, it discussed, together with the Executive Board, the course of business and the situation of the company and the group, as well as significant business transactions. And between the meetings, the Supervisor was also continuously informed about developments in the individual divisions and the major group companies. We also scrutinized deviations in performance compared with plans presented at the start of the year. The Supervisory Board work in 2024 focused on the following 3 topics. First, throughout the entire financial year, the topic of low carbon steel production used in the Salzgitter program was once again of top importance. As you know, iron ore is smelted using coal as a reducing agent and their source of energy. This results in considerable carbon dioxide emissions. The emissions of carbon dioxide in the European require quantity-based emission certificates to be purchased, some of which must be purchased. This is not only associated with considerable costs, but would also wish to achieve a significant reduction in national and global CO2 emissions. In order to achieve this, it will be necessary to use completely new processes in the steel production industry. This will involve major investments. For this reason, the Supervisory Board once again in February 24 had a special meeting for the SALCOS program, in particular to consider the possible content and timetable for the next stage of implementation. In addition, the Supervisory Board closely supported the Executive Board in the implementation of efficiency programs. These programs were consistently continued and expanded, and the earnings improvements potential resulting from those measures add up by 2028 to an amount of euro 500 million. And thirdly, in the final quarter of the Salzgitter AG, it was informed by its shareholder GP Gunnar Pappenburg AG that it was considering submitting a voluntary public takeover bid to the company's shareholders for the TSR Recycling GmbH and Co. KG. In response to this announcement, the Supervisory Board authorized the establishment of a takeover committee and an appointment of its own financial advisor to prepare any possible position on that takeover bid. In April of this year, this terminated concerning such a takeover offer, and more details will be provided later today. Furthermore, I would like to please refer to page 7 of the annual report for more details of Supervisory Board activities. Before we come to the Executive Board report, I would like to give you a few explanations on the Supervisory Board's proposed resolutions. In item 2, it is proposed to distribute a dividend of 20 per dividend-bearing share for fiscal year 2024. The Supervisory Board is of the opinion that this represents an appropriate balance between the justified dividend interests of the shareholders and the company's need to retain profits. Item 5 of the agenda, the Supervisory Board proposes that the EY GmbH and Co. KG auditors are appointed as auditors for fiscal year 2024. This company has been working for us since 2020. The audit committee of the Supervisory has monitored the activities of the company and is satisfied with the quality of the audit. So we think it is a good idea to propose that company be reappointed. Item 6 of the agenda is proposed that the report be prepared for the 2024 financial year on the remuneration of the members of the Executive Board and the Supervisory Board, that report be approved. Item 7 is proposed to increase the remuneration of the members of the Audit Committee of the Supervisory Board. This was confirmed at the AGM last year. Only the members of the remuneration The work of the board has increased significantly since 2013 in particular, and there is an increase suggested which is considered appropriate for their work. Points item 9 of the agenda propose that in view of the expiry of the current authorization in July 2025, that the Executive Board be granted a new authorization to acquire and use treasury shares and use derivatives in this context, and to explain details of this can be found in the notice to the AGM. Finally, item 10 of the agenda, it is proposed that the articles of association of the company be amended to allow the Executive Board to authorize a virtual AGM. And again, that authorization is limited for a period of 2 years. Ladies and gentlemen, I would now like to ask Mr. Groebler, the CEO of the Salzgitter AG, to present his supplementary comments on the management report and the group management report, and to provide the AGM with a report on current business. Mr. Groebler.
Dear shareholders, friends of the Salzgitter AG, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Welcome to our AGM. Thank you very much that you've taken the time to come here to Wolfsburg, but also when you're listening to us in the live stream. I'm looking forward to our exchange with you today, and I'd like to start with a view at the overall picture, the big picture, politically, economically in Germany, in Europe and everywhere, because all of that, us as raw materials industry, are affected by it. You all know the quote by Joachim Ringelnatz. He said, the only thing that's sure is that nothing is for sure, and even that isn't for sure. And that quote is about 100 years old, but it still fits in today's situation. Many of the securities that we took for granted over centuries are gone. Peace in Europe, we got used to it. Now it's war only 2 hours by plane from here, and that's been going on for 3 years. The transatlantic partnership, before it was hard as a rock, now it's brittle. Free world trade, core component of globalization, and now in many places we have isolation because of tariffs. Germany as the world champion in export now for the 3rd year without any growth, and many of our clients notice the effects of the bad economic situation. Productions are down, plants are being closed, externalizations, everybody feels the pressure. In Germany too, because of the high energy costs, which currently are being discussed everywhere. And if you think, well, it's going to be okay again, and this may be just one small crisis, well, that is a person from yesterday's world, because the world has changed in the past couple of months. You can talk about it, you can complain about it, or you can do something about it. We decided to do something about it. And that's not the easy way. It's a tougher road to travel, but I think we have already achieved quite a bit, and I'll talk about that today. What we do know is that not everything is in our own hands. It's not that by our own strength we can change everything, but we are convinced that we can make it and be successful. Ladies and gentlemen, what are we expecting? Well, first of all, let's take a look at the financial figures, proposal for dividend payout, and the current development of the company. But in these times, we have to look at the political framework conditions, because they have an effect and an impact on our business. But mostly I'd like to put the focus on what we ourselves can do to secure our future and our competitiveness here at Salzgitter AG. These are our activities in the framework of strategy, and what we're doing is we have a holistic approach as to economic stability, and that's how we approach the current challenges. Changes like the transformation program Salcos, we already heard about it, or our efforts to stabilize the financial situation is only possible with committed people. And therefore, let me tell my gratitude first to our 24,000 staff, who also in 2024 have been giving their everything for the company and for our success. And I would also like to thank you, dear shareholders, for trusting in us and your long connection with us. Well, we heard about the possible takeover offer of a group from the GP Gunnar Papenburg AG and the TSR Recycling GmbH. We know both companies and have good relations with them. And Papenburg, for years now, has been a stable shareholder, anchor shareholder with us for quite some time. At the beginning, there was a very intense and rather constructive exchange between the management board and the group, and we, of course, always thought about the interest of our company and our shareholders. But having looked at it in great detail, the management board decided in April to terminate the discussions. We had different ideas as to the future value of Salzgitter AG. and the M&A committee of the supervisory board, after a long discussion, agreed with us. And such a way that a process terminates in the business world is something very normal. During the whole process, I saw the process as something extremely fair and open. And I would like to thank all of those involved. And what is very important is the good cooperation between the Salzgitter AG and the two groups. And with Günther Papenburg AG as an important shareholder and as a business partner, we still maintain great relations with them, just like with TSR on scrap handling. We have always had a good relationship with them. Dear shareholders, let me now talk about the situation of the Salzgitter AG in the business year 2024. As you know from previous AGMs, you know one thing is very important to me, and that is industrial safety. Compared to the previous years, we had fewer accidents, which is great. LTIF, long-term IF, the number of accidents in relation to the hours worked. But one fatal accident since our last AGM reminds us that every accident has to be avoided. We want to stick to our objective of 0 accidents. While we're meeting here, in parallel, we have the practical days for industrial safety in Salzgitter. 400 colleagues right now are participating in that training, are being trained again and sensitized as to the field of industrial safety. Our group-wide integrated safety strategy is being implemented. And we don't only want them to be physically safe, but we also think of everybody else, all the temps who work for us, these people who come to our sites and work there for some time. We think of them too. Ladies and gentlemen, let me talk about the implementation of the group strategy and the ways we want to design our joint future. In 24, within the framework of the group strategy, many measures have been implemented, and we have made a lot of progress. In our pioneering approach, there are some examples now. In April 24, at the Hanover Fair, we showed the first time our product brand of green steel. We called it Salcos. So it's not only the transformation process at Salzgitter, but first from Peine and then the other plants of Salzgitter. We now have the focus there, but soon the other plants will also go along this new process. And we have already shown and discussed that we want to have CO2 low emissions in our steel production. And we have our PPAs, our power purchase agreements, done in exactly those ways. Salzgitter AG ranged in 2024 in Europe amongst the top 15, and in Germany we were amongst the top 10 who were doing PPAs. And as the first company in the steel industry, we had so-called export credit agencies, and these are called green loan financing, to the tune of 500 million euros. And this type of financing is a way, an important module in liquidity in our financing of transformation. At the same time, as one of the first companies in Germany, we have started a tender for our long-term supply of direct reduction plant with about 150,000 tons of green hydrogen per year. And the response was rather positive. It was quite surprising, actually, because in less than 24 hours, we had more than 100 companies that put in their proposal on our website. And now we're talking to about 10 providers for hydrogen as soon as we are connected to the network, because we need the pipeline for that, of course. The conclusion is it's not the availability which is the problem, but it is the price. And that, of course, is a combination of industrialization. It's a pretty new field, and of course, the regulator. So what is the price that the regulator will put? And another thing that we're working on, and we have already made progress in 2024, is a construction of a major shredding plant at Salzgitter. And again, that was another module in our Salzgitter strategy. And this plant makes sure that we get the supply of green steel for the green materials for the production of steel. Just what we want in our Salzgitter route for relatively good quality scrap. And this is the strategic core, to look for the right qualities. And as you know, circularity is at the core of our new approach. With many of our clients, we have so-called closed loop agreements. So we get back the scrap that you always have in any production process. So this is called pre-consumer scrap. We buy it back, and that way we have access to high quality scrap, good material that we can then again use in our production of green steel. I mentioned Salzgitter a few times already, and it is one of the biggest construction sites in all of Germany. Pictures speak a clearer language. Therefore, I would like to share this film with you.
Hier passiert's.
This is where it's happening, ladies and gentlemen. I think you've seen that looking at the film. No matter if the sun is shining or not, if it's Monday or Thursday, it is actually happening. And if I can get my script back, I can keep talking. I would like to talk about the business results of 2024. I said that 2024 has been a very challenging year. The market environment was coined by a lack of progress. Everybody thought that we would feel an upstream at the end of the year, but on top of that didn't happen. And on top of that, we had further tariffs. And since everywhere in the world there was a problem in the industry, and therefore there was less demand. And this, of course, had an impact on our business in any activities related to steel. EBITDA, but still at 455 million, higher than what we had expected in the fall. And also positive, and that is positive, 109 million euro was the pre-tax result consolidated at 406 million, with expenditure for impairments, restructuring, and other special effects. And with these figures, you see that many measures have in fact had an impact in stabilizing the result. Cost reduction, working capital optimization, portfolio measures, and a clear focus on investment. On top of that, we have started many restructuring projects, especially in the field of steel processing and trade, and they also show their results in 2025. And what is also positive here is, and I would like to point that out in particular, the field of technology has had a special result. 100 million was the pre-tax result before special effects, and that's about 300 million minus before the background of the future transformational tasks are simply not enough. That's a fact. It will not suffice. Therefore, we're working hard on improving our profitability. But I'll get to that in a minute. And before I get to that, dear shareholders, I would like to talk about your participation. Even though we had a negative result this year, the joint proposal from the Supervisory Board and the Management Board is to have a dividend of 20 cents per share for 2024. And you may ask yourself, is that right to pay out a dividend in these hard times? We think yes, it is. And we have consciously decided on that, because we wanted to show that you can rely on us, you can trust in us. Our dividend continuity is part of our long-term policy, and especially in challenging time, it is very important to show this type of stability. Therefore, we think that 20 cents dividend per share, also in the face of a difficult environment, gives you an appropriate compensation, a compensation between your demands for participation and, of course, the financial care that we need to take in the transformation of our company. Part of that is our overall approach, which is holistic. We want organic growth on the one hand and have initiatives for performance. Without growth and no innovation, there is no future. No performance and no financial solidity is no resilience in order to overcome difficult times like these. The Salzgitter Group has clearly addressed fields of growth and innovation. Our results currently is behind that what we actually expect for ourselves. Therefore, I would like to tell you about the resharpened performance measures that we have adopted. In our portfolio management, Mannesmann Stainless Tubes Group, as well as the business of the seamless and precision tubes, has been sold. On top of that, we're in the selling process of Desma shoe machines. The question is always, are we the best owners for this type of business, or are there maybe other companies that could run it better? And it's not only that we have been selling, we have already also sold. 2, participation in companies that have highly specialized solution for the bottling process, and therefore we have extended our portfolio in important places. In the field of structure, we are talking about the stock keeping trade as well as the MPT on the base of changed framework conditions. We have restructured it, and we remember the reserves that we had formed for it back in 24. So in the stock keeping trade, we have slimmed down the management structure, we have reduced staff, and in the MPT, we closed down Helmond with about 70 people, and all of that has participated and helped in making it more profitable. Now, with SOT, we closed down Helmond. That was actually in the Netherlands, and that's going to happen on the 30th of September. Of course, these people are affected by it. Under the new program P28, we have extended our measures to improve our results. I'll speak about that in detail a little bit later. And also, because of the difficult economic situation in the market at the moment, we have also adopted some short-term measures for cash and liquidity. And these measures are not permanent. These are one-off tools to stave off the negative effects that we are feeling at present. Talking about the P28, well, we have extended the scope of our improvements and results. Remember, with the introduction of the strategy Salzgitter AG 2030, we had a program called Performance 2026, and we had identified 250 million euros identified. But that's not enough, and we see that now. That's why we now have an additional program for the improvement of results, and we focused on procurement, logistics, and sales, and that is an additional 500 million euros that we want to implement within P28. And what we have just started now shows that we are ready in the first quarter with the 150 million euros that we already have been able to save, and the new 150 on top. We are showing the effects. We're still not there yet, but we have already gone quite a way. So we're doing it. And one thing is true, here passiert's, it's happening right here. The way we organize our programs and the way we make our work more efficient. Dear shareholders, but that is not only the recipe for success. We need to generate continuous growth, and with all the focus that we have now on performance measures, on an increase of resilience, we also want growth in all of our fields. When I look at the field of steel production, we of course continue with our circular economy approach and work it all around these streams of values. So we have the so-called closed loops, closed economic cycles to get the steel scrapping back and use them as raw material. That's called circularity. And the approach to high quality sources of scrap are part of our 5 strategic control points. We're talking about scrap, we're talking about energy, we're talking about hydrogen, we're talking about high quality iron ore pellets, and what you saw in the film, we're talking about the plant that we need, of course, to have the access to these new technologies. And as to closed loop, I can't tell you the name yet, but we are currently talking about a contract with a major European car manufacturer. They made this contract with us, which means that we can use a significant volume of their production for high quality scrap. Communication will be happening in the next days to come. Let's talk about steel production, steel processing. We just had the production. Well, we're talking about heavy plate, and we want it to be secure in this, and that's the name also of this business field, secure. Safety steels and Mannesmann H2 ready. And we also want to extend the growing portfolio to the sustainable market segments, especially wind energy. Our green steel is used by Siemens Energy to build a new wind energy park with green towers, and we can show with our materials we are participating in the decarbonization of the industry. Trade. Well, we're not the only people who want CO2 green steel, but in our heavy plate specialist Universal, we have possibilities of development in the field of safety steels in Europe and beyond. It's the company called Universal. And here we're talking about the processing of safety steels, and there is new potential in infrastructure. Technology, I just said that. KHS is continuing their course of growth, and there it is our Platmax plant that they're using. What is that? Well, they make the PET bottles that you all know, and they get a nano-thick glass film, so the time that the liquid can stay in the bottle will be extended substantially, and that helps us to have another foot in the door in India, because KHS is very strong in the Indian market, and the clients have trust in us. So what helps here is, of course, that KHS has this special relation with India. They are there, and we now have a production network globally. And that was one of the reasons why we wanted to work with KHS. And in all four fields, we see clear opportunities for growth, and bit by bit, we will approach these different areas. Well, one of the most important fields, of course, is green steel. Again, that takes me back to Salzgitter. This is our biggest construction site in every sense of the word. So this is the first step now. We saw that now in the film, but there have been some critical voices as to the success of green steel in Europe. And can it be successful? And even some politicians are asking these very critical questions. We are firmly convinced that this is the right way, and we think that the future belongs to green steel. But it is the future. But of course, it's also the client's view. Let's see what they have to say. I mean, these are the ones who actually want to buy this green steel and are supposed to buy it. Let's take a look.
Stahl als einer der Grundmaterialien bei allem, auch was wir als Unternehmen bauen, wird eine essentielle Bedeutung haben, wirklich eine komplette Dekarbonisierung hinzubekommen. Und das sehen wir bei uns in den Türmen für die Windräder, das sehen wir in den Plattformen für die großen Gleichstromübertragungs-Konverterstationen. Und überall bei allem, was wir bauen, ob im Kraftwerk oder bei Übertragungsleitungen, werden wir grünen Stahl brauchen. Und nur dann, wenn wir wirklich die Industrie dekarbonisieren können.
Wir haben das klare Ziel, bis 2039 eine bilanziell CO2-neutrale Neuwagenflotte.
We want to have a new fleet of cars that is CO2 neutral, and we're working on that. Salzgitter Group helps us a lot because they have already established a route in which they manufacture green steel, and we know that this way we can in fact save more than 75% of CO2. And we want the steel from these new routes.
Nachhaltigkeit kriegen wir nicht mehr wegdiskutiert. Und,
well, sustainability is key, and green steel is very important in construction, I think. And as you see it, green steel home, and I think that's where the future lies, in green steel.
Aus der Zusammenarbeit mit Salzgitter.
Well, with this Salzgitter Corporation, our machine can go to A30G, the newest generation, and that is the most modern technology, the newest Sennebogen, the development of the CO2 reduced steel provided by Salzgitter. That's a great combination. It's a shocker project, and that will have a great future. Ladies and gentlemen, I think that was a clear language by our clients. And as we just seen it, every day at the construction site, we are progressing. And in the first half of 2027, we will be able to deliver green steel, and they will be the first to receive it. And the first half of 2027. And we said 2026, but because of the delays in construction in one of our 5 partial projects, the electrolyte furnace, we have a delay in our acceptance by a few months. And the reason is that we need to clarify some technical questions, which of course also means that it costs more. It's less than 10% of the 2.3 billion euros, but it's still an additional cost. Dear clients, please be sure, rest assured that our teams are working very hard to get the plant ready to manufacture green steel and then to deliver it. But one thing is for sure, safety at the construction site is key. And no compromises there when it comes to quality. So let's take a look again at the political environment in Berlin and Brussels. At the beginning, I already said how strong the political framework conditions have impacting our work. 25 years ago, the French Minister of Foreign Relations, Robert Schuman, presented his idea for a peaceful Europe. And that was the core of the EGKS, which is today's EU. But steel today is much more than the founding myth of the EU. It is still the industrial foundation of Europe. It's the basis material for very important industries, and of course is necessary for safety and defense. So the European Commission, talking to the individual member states of the EU and us as the industry, They talked about the European Steel and Metals Action Plan and approved it to give important impulses for fair global competition and a long-term support of the steel industry. That's the first time ever that a European Commission is positioning itself in this way. And that also was part of the coalition agreement of the new federal government. The steel industry is seen as the key industry for the business location of Germany. The steel industry is of a central strategic importance for Germany as a business location. We want to keep it and make it ready for the future in their changeover of the production processes on the way to climate neutrality. And this is a clear statement by the federal government that they want us to be ready for the future. For Salzgitter AG and the overall industry, that was a strong and important signal. But it's also a sustainable success of our work in Berlin, in Brussels, so that it has become successful. And this is something that will also happen in the future, because now we have to actually make it happen and implement these ideas. And we make sure that we help the politicians in their decision making with our expertise. Let me talk about two elements that we have also discussed. The new federal government said it very clearly that the industry is important for the system. It's systemically relevant. Our products like girders, beams, heavy plate, and pipes support decarbonization of the society. And the government in March agreed on a special funding for the infrastructure to the tune of 500 billion euros. And of course, it will take a while before this is actually going to be translated into real contracts. First, we've seen it in the special funding for defense, but the German Industry for Economic Research, DIW, forecast that the effect for the German economic performance will be at 1% next year, and it will go up until 2030. Many infrastructure projects like logistics, streets, roads, trains, tracks, and so on, everything. Also, water, hydrogen pipelines, grids, offshore, onshore plants, etc. They all are made of steel. So you see, this is a field of growth, and we are well positioned in this field. And we expect impulses of growth. What has to happen now is, of course, that this is being implemented fast and in an intelligent way, meaning, and I demand of the federal government to get it on the road quickly and to help the industry to be able to perform value creation in the region. We need energy costs that are down for the price of electricity. We need lead markets also beyond the plans of the Steel and Metals Action Plans. We need a basis for climate political funding in our industry, because for a resilient economy, you need a very strong basic materials industry. Ladies and gentlemen, apart from infrastructure, it's also defense that has become important, not only for Germany, but all over Europe. We now see that there are new demands on defense. If we like it or not, that's the reality at the moment. And again, here, the need for steel, especially special grade steel for military and safety-specific uses, is growing. So far, our company has only been providing a small fraction of our sales in this field. before the Zeitwende, this was not our target market, but now we see the necessity. And with a number of products, we're well positioned. Classic steels for protective devices. We have it now in serial production, and we're technologically new, with a technologically new and novel safety steel with an improved quality. This is all military grade, and system houses are also being incremented at the moment, and we expect a significant extension of our business activities in Germany and all of Europe, also because many of the defense companies want their supply chains based in Europe. Let me talk about 2025. I think that for all of us, the US tariff policy was the dominating theme of the past weeks. But our domestic market is still weak. We are in an economic stagnation. So these are environmental conditions that are not really helpful. On the contrary, and the sales in the first quarter were below the level of the previous years. There are reasons for that. Fewer volumes, lower prices, average prices for steel, and of course we didn't have the contribution of the Mannesmann Stainless Tubes Group, which we sold the year before. And on top of that, we had the US trade policy, which had an impact on the exchange rates, and we now had to provide for risks, and this risk provision has a pre-tax result of 33 million euro. Solidified, these effects gave a result that was slightly positive pre-tax and was at the level of the previous year. And here again, you see that these performance measures are being implemented and they strengthen our resilience. And if we look at the forecast, dear shareholders, it can be seen that in the first quarter we had slightly increased steel prices, but we still think that the challenges should not become less, especially the lack of safety in international trade, and therefore there is a lot of hesitance in the decision to invest. In the context of the International Monetary Fund and the German federal government have actually said that the expectation for the next year is at 0, which was confirmed yesterday by the expert council of the federal government. But we still think that our forecast remains safe for the group. It's sales of 9.5 to 10 billion euro, EBITDA 350 to 550, and a pre-tax result of minus and plus 100 million euro. You see there is a bit of a bandwidth here, but that is what we need to have now because we can't be so secure. Let me summarize that. 2024, we have managed many milestones in the implementation of the group strategy, and we've shown that we are active even in a difficult environment. Our performance measures are showing an effect, and they're contributing to the stabilization of the result. And we have a potential for growth in all fields, mostly in the fields of energy, infrastructure, and defense. All of that together creates the basis for being able to face the future by Salzgitter AG. On top of that, Europe and Germany have now clearly said that the steel industry is a strategic key industry. And we make sure that Germany's industrial legacy will remain also for generations to come. Therefore, we're driving our transformation in a consistent but smart way, in a balance between ecology and economy. In many fields we have already been successful, but we need stamina. It's like a marathon run. We still have quite a ways to go, but I can assure you that in this course we will continue at full power to make sure that Salzgitter AG, your company, our company, is going to be the winner of these changes. We're working on that. We here in the management board and all the others, and also the 25,000 staff members, work on this every day. Thank you very much for your attention. All the best.
Thank you very much, Mr. Groebler, for your detailed report and your in-depth comments on the current situation. I'd like to thank all viewers watching on screens for your participation. The public live broadcast